Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tarnished Bronze. You're here with Patrick and myself to take a look at Legion number one. Now, this is maybe the third or the fourth Legion number one across the space of 15 years. So, what's special about this one, Patrick?
So this follows Levitt's extremely popular run through the 80s that concluded with Magic Wars. Um, it was in the Baxter series. I want to say it wrapped up around, you actually just read them all, maybe 80 something, 60 something, somewhere around there.
Yep,
Um,
63, I think.
there you go. They put a pin in it after Magic Wars and they jump forward 5 years later. This is called the 5 year gap. And at that point, Keith Giffen picks up Legion of Superheroes and does the writing and the drawing. But I guess he gets an assist with the writing from the Bierbaums. Um, During the 5 year gap, I did make a little list for my source book that I own that you do not yet, I think. But these are the things that happened during the 5 year gap. The economies of Earth and many of the United Planets has collapsed. The Coons have invaded the United Planets, and Earth has seceded from the UP. Phantom Girl has apparently been killed. Now we know that she's actually been, well, at this time, canon was that she was shunted into the past. I think they've since retconned that. Brawl, Cosmic Boy's home planet, and Impsk, Shrinking Violet's home planet, have gone to war with each other. A thing called the Black Dawn Crisis has occurred, during which Wildfire has been lost. Several other members are injured, and many resigned during this. Um, the group eventually disbands at the behest of EarthGov, and Polar Boy, who was the leader when the Legion finally disbanded, has been arrested. And Sunboy has seemingly betrayed the Legion and become a spokesman for the government of Earth. So that's just sort we do not get all this from the first issue. Like I
So,
said, I actually have the source book that kind of explains everything that happened in the 5 year gap. So I just thought I'd go ahead and throw that out there. But that is, yeah, the way that they have chosen to deal with this is just to jump 5 years into the future and just give us little snippets so that it's sort of an unfolding mystery as we go through the first issues of what has happened in the past and how did we get where we are.
so we get a lot of back matter in these. So the letters column explains some stuff. There's text pages that are kind of dressed up as sort of like computer communiques or people's journal article writings and so on and so forth. So Legion of Superheroes 5 years later is a very, very rich, very, very intricate world in which you're dropped in. So it's a very demanding series. Now, if I manage to clone myself, I'm thinking that Patrick and I might make our own comic based on each of these dot points in the 5 year gap because they're largely sort of unexplored in and out of canon, to be quite frank. So it's quite a fascinating thing that they stopped something which was relatively successful. Legion of Superheroes was right up there with the X-Men and Teen Titans of the day as far as like mainstream popularity. So it's an amazing thing that Keith Giffen is able to do to sort of steer his own ship and not just keep sort of the kettle boiling, but to make it so drastically different. I think Levitz had done exactly 100 issues of Legion of Superheroes up to that point, so I think that's why he decided to bow out. Keith Giffen had been a Legion fanboy for the longest time, which is how he met the Bierbaums, and he was also like a long-standing artist. Now, the tone of this, Patrick, you've got to think every time I read one of these 5 years later issues, I'm like, Keith Giffen is currently doing Justice League International, which is the Bwahaha Justice League International, Ambush Bug, and some
Ambush
other
Bug.
comical series. So um, he's kind of got this really dichotomous thing going on with his
You
approach.
you have some comic relief in these, especially with Kono, one of the new characters he introduces, and so you do get some of the Giffen humor. But yeah, it's very dark, and it's a huge departure from what we had seen with the Legion. Right? They had been in lots of different scrapes. There were definitely some dark stories and some dark circumstances they had to overcome, but the mood and tone of the book wasn't so dark. Now we're more in a dystopian future instead of a hopeful future. The Legion, as we know it, doesn't really even exist. It's been disbanded. And so, yeah, the idea was, I guess, just to take a full 180 from what people were used to seeing with the Legion. I My understanding, like looking back, I think a lot of people think that that was not successful. My understanding now from reading blogs and hearing about people, because full disclosure, I sort of entered college around, well, no, I guess high school, sometime around the end of the Magic Wars. So I was completely unaware and not involved in the 5 years later storyline. I collected these from issue one, probably about 20 years ago, and read them straight through. And
Oh,
I
so
had
you
not,
checked out. So
I
you weren't
stopped
someone who was dissatisfied. You just
because I wasn't even participating. I think a lot of people think that people were, but my understanding now, just to finish that thought, sorry, was that it actually did sell well at the beginning. So they were able to get their fan base on board to go with this drastic departure of what we had kind of known as the Legion, which is surprising to me because it really is very different. And going back and rereading it. I thought I love the Legion. I really love Keith Giffen. I thought I would like it more, but even as a sort of a, I don't want to say expert, but a Legion aficionado, I still feel like it's a very heavy reading. It does really ask a lot from the reader, and I don't need my hand held as a reader, but it's a little bit too sketchy at points for me. It's I would like to know just a little bit more. I don't necessarily need an unraveling mystery. Just like a plot a little bit more. So a little
so
critical.
one of the reasons that channel exists is to kind of get into these sort of maligned or overlooked aspects of this era. Now, Legion, this volume of Legion would go for over 100 issues. There was a spin off that went for over 60 issues. There's also Legion, which Patrick and I do want to get into because it's basically a third Legion book set in the current sort of DC realm. This is obviously financially successful at this point. Otherwise, you wouldn't have spin-off books and things that last over 100 issues and so on and so forth. But it's a tonal departure, albeit maybe not so much from the last 10 issues of the Levitz era, but it's a tonal departure from this isn't your Jim Shooter Legion
Mm-mm.
stories, Patrick. And so it is very demanding and it's demanding on me. And I have access to the internet and I have the entire 5 years later Uber just sitting there all stacked up so I can refer to it and so on and so forth. And the internet. Now, I can understand if you were getting this drip fed to you month by month, it's almost inscrutable,
Oh,
especially.
you would have to read the issues over and over and sort of interpret who is speaking and what does this little clip mean, and because it definitely does a lot of the background story by just giving a flash and a few words, and then the reader just interprets the rest. And like I said, I mean that there's nothing wrong with that at all. I don't want to appear to be somebody who has to, like I said, I think lazy readers and people who have to have their hand held through entertainment experiences, that's kind of lame. But this is so far to the other side that it takes a little bit of the entertainment value away when you have to work that hard to figure out what's going on. I think
So
that's fair.
yeah, this is more of a journey of discovery for me. Like I thought I was well and truly into the Legion lore, but this required some deciphering, let's say that. So
We've
the
we've
first
completely
bit.
done away with all the costumes. We've done away with, you know, it's it's just it's a huge departure. And also again, full disclosure, not my favorite Keith Giffen artwork. This is definitely getting into his more sort of, I would say, a little bit sloppier art style that he was entrenched in for quite some time. It's a
It's
little bit more
punk.
reminiscent of the ambush bug stories that we saw, right?
it's very punk to me. The other stuff is kind of like very polished. It's very space western, you know. Whereas this has almost got a sort of post-punk ethos, that real European cartooning style of, you know, he's a stylist. It's this isn't meant to be necessarily direct representational art. Now we're doing stylistic takes.
Now, were you speaking of European, were you the one, or is this something I read on the internet where people say that I guess he stole a lot from a particular French artist, I think.
So
He
this
did like
isn't
some-
the this is a little bit of that Munoz thing, but I think that was like before this, not currently. Just to put that into perspective, more what I meant was the clothing and the drapery and stuff is all very uh Band-Aid Desnay or however you say it, or 2000 AD ish.
we're getting very chunky. We're getting the pouches that you love. All the people
I
are
love a
starting to look a
pouch.
little bit like trolls, and we see just on this page the Emerald Empress and whoever this sun-drenched playground chic person, they have the same lips.
Yeah, yeah. So once you see it, you can't unsee it. I think that's the thing that bogs people down in this era. So this is 9 panels to a grid, 22 pages. So 9 times 22 is over two, you know, almost 200 panels, 198 panels, I think. 198 panels that you have to draw. And that's without all the back matter. Oh, and by the way, I'm doing the plots. Oh, and by the way, I'm like basically doing this whole thing by myself. I can understand how one would codify and do some shorthanding for
Hmm.
especially various poses. Now, I'm all sort of for it. I think the reason that Giffen does the 9 panels is because you got so much more value for money for the story was one of the reasons. Some might say everything looks the same. Like you know, you guys be the judge, but I'm just going to present this is the first sort of thing. This is the stream of consciousness, first basically 3 pages after 3 pages into issue one, ending where it says click here. Now, for me, I actually thought that going forward, all of different people's verbiage would be color coded. Not the case. So one of the things that I think would have made this an easier entry point is if everyone who is talking, even if I don't know who they are, they should maybe have their same slightly different font and or their same little like color window, much like the old Legion stuff would have the captions with the what's the name of
Insignia.
interlac with the interlac
Yep.
symbol for that person. So Giffen made into like he invented that. So I'm kind of annoyed that he didn't lean into that more. Um, but nonetheless, we get caught up. Sun Boy's just like a garbage human now. He's shilling for Earth Gov. A lot of people get upset about the face heel turns that some of these people do. 5 years is a long time. I've changed a lot. I'm not gonna like. This is just maybe one of the things that Patrick and I will do in our retirement is we'll make our comics on how these people became this way from where we last saw them. But basically, Patrick, a lot of what you covered in your original prelude about all of these different wars and all of these different occurrences and how Earth is no longer part of the United Planets and so on is all kind of alluded to but not directly spoken to. So that's another thing is some of the things I'm like, is this going to come down the pike? Is this a plot point? Or oh, was this in the recent past? Um,
Yeah, when you know what they're alluding to, then the little snippets on the first 3 pages make more sense. When you don't, they can be very difficult. And like I said, you maybe have to read it a few times. But yeah, they give a little brief history of the Legion, super brief, very high points, and then a few updates on current events.
and yeah, the first person that I recognize in the thing, besides like this um, Cook's tour through history, is Chameleon Boy. Um,
Yes.
I think he's even the first like over character who someone calls him by name, right?
Oh yeah, maybe so. He has decided that it's time to get the Legion back together. It's been a few years since they've been disbanded by Earth, and he's going to make it his job to locate the requisite Legionnaires and get them back into a functioning group again. And here,
And
there, you can see that he's having a conversation with what is going to be a stand-in for, like, I guess the android of the day, right?
yeah, I
That's
did. So, by the way, yeah, all of the eyeless people are androids. They're across all of the different strata of society. So the Earth Gov, who it turns out is run by our friends from Invasion with the big teeth, the Dominators. There's a lot going on. We could talk for half an hour about like all this stuff. Um, One of the things that irritates me is they're not named. Their names their name, like their real name, not their code name. It's very confusing. And I've had a deep dive in the last sort of 1.5 years on reading Legion all the way from maybe issue 250 odd all the way through to this now. And so if I find it inscrutable and I have all of this just at my fingertips, I can't imagine what it would have been like for someone like you, Patrick, even reading this 20 years after, but maybe issue by issue.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, with the code names is not some that is sort of ingrained in my head, but I found with the art that sometimes the characters, because we have no costumes, we have no
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah,
it can kind of be difficult to ascertain who they are unless they actually do, if they call it, she calls him Rock, okay, oh that's Cosmic Boy.
yeah.
But and also like you said, we get a lot of panels where it's just a blank panel with words and we're not meant to know who's speaking, and that can be a little annoying too.
Yeah,
But
I think so. If it's detective fiction, that's called not playing fair. So if you play fair, you're letting someone know who is actually doing that dialogue. Not playing fair in sort of detective fiction language is like when the identity of the person who's doing something is sort of obscured for non for story for plot based reasons, not for story based reasons. And so that kind of irritates me. And I just wanted to highlight that some of these individual art is like really good, but I can understand how it's not to everyone's taste. But I just was wanting to highlight here some of the panels that I really think works. And I know we're using recycling facial expressions, but I think it does. There are moments of levity here. I just wanted to sort of point that out. And so Chameleon Boy, he's power. Chameleon Boy is trying to get the band back together. Um, Everyone is suffering from sort of trauma here, right, Patrick? Like
yeah,
everyone's in.
Cosmic. This is Cosmic Boy. Legion fans would love the fact that he's living with Night Girl. This is his longtime love interest. So they're shacked up together on Brawl. But yes, exactly. He's sort of having flashbacks to his time in the Imsk War, which has resulted in Brawl being occupied by Imsk. And yet they're still living there just under sort of dire circumstances and just trying to make it through day by day. He's actually lost his magnetism powers and is just an injured, sort of broken man at this point.
We're getting into some more sci-fi stuff. I really do wish that they would just draw more sci-fi stuff. You've got the 9 panels to fill. I mean, still really good at that, Keith Giffen. Um, with his geometrical and the different geometry denotes the different civilizations. So I don't need to tell you, Patrick, but like he's still just very, very good at that. And then this is where we kind of like this is almost sort of like what people can expect if they haven't read this stuff about the back matter. So the back matter would just have these text blocks that look like computer screens and stuff, and they'd explain things. This is an invite to go and live with. Is it Saturn?
Lightning
The
Lass.
lightning people.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. So Shrinking Violet has also fought in the Brawl Imsk War. She's received a dishonorable discharge. She's gotten this scar on her eye, which they we which were we learn that it can easily be fixed, but she's keeping it from pride. But she's on her way to Wynneth, which is the home planet of Lightning Lad and Lightning Lass. Lightning Lass is now her love interest, which this wasn't so much alluded to in the previous series, but maybe a little bit. It was more of a fan theory, I think, and they've
Yeah.
just sort of gone ahead and gone with it. So she's going to go and hook up and have her lesbian love affair, which is great. You know, representation matters. But this is called the Lightning Ring Plantation on Wynneth. Wynneth is an agricultural planet, and Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad have gone back to raise their family and to, work on a
It,
plantation.
is that in the topless place? Like,
Wynneth is it's known to be a place where people don't wear where the locals don't wear clothes. Yeah.
yeah. So you read into that what you will. So then, Chameleon Boy's trying to get the band back together. So you meant there's this character Loomis who sort of looms in and out of things here. Is he someone from the past, or is that a new character for this?
That's a new character. He's
Okay.
another Brawlian, who's, I guess, friends with Cosmic Boy. And yeah, he's used sort of as a plot device, I think.
One of the things I'm not upset by is the color choices in these issues. I like the desaturated stuff. I love the color palette that they choose to use. Chameleon Boy here is trying to convince Cosmic Boy to get back on board. We want to re-kick off the Legion. I know things are bad. For some reason, he's squinting all the time. Like, I don't know why that is, Patrick. Hopefully, you and I don't look like that all the time. Yeah, is that
I mean,
is
I
that?
feel like Cosmic Boy's also squinting, except in
Yeah,
one panel.
yeah.
Maybe the air is very acrid.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Um,
That's my no
that
prize.
that might be a great test, like the canary in the coal mine. If things are bad, then Chameleon Boy stops squinting, and you know that it's time for danger. Um, yeah, just wanted to let everyone kind of get a grip of to how much you can fit in this issue, because and I'm only just getting every other page or something. It's just astonishing how much do they and in an era where you can read a comic in about 6 minutes in 2025, like I was shocked by how deep these were, Patrick. Even without trying to do the detective work, these are just um, thorough reads. Um, then we get into some more world building. So there's two things I want to get into before we start our open discussion, Patrick. One thing is info dump versus world building. This type of thing at the end is kind of like a TV ad for this. It's timeshare or some resort village or something. I would call this world building. Okay. The info dumps I would consider the back matter, that those front things. I love world building. Info dumps is a bit much. Now you can info dump in a world build, and that's a little bit what's going on
Mm.
in this ad. I think it's kind of like a TV ad. This lady is watching television. I think we're meant to know who she is, but I can't tell right now from that top left panel. But that is the sort of thing that I really love in this. It rewards close reading. The fact that it comes out every month means it's perhaps not the best vehicle in which to do this, Patrick. But I also want to just mention some of this isn't 9 panel grid, it's a technical break. So this bottom example here is like this would all be one panel, but it's just divided up by the panel borders. So Patrick, I want to get into the discussion about this because we're going to kind of follow it until the major ending of the first sort of story arc of 5 years, 5 years later. Now, to me, I went into it not really knowing what to expect. And then when I read it, this was not what I expected, but nonetheless, I kind of enjoyed it. I don't think it's them trying to do like Legion Watchmen, which is some people sort of dismiss this as. So I'm going to give my. I've got a list of things that I like that I think works, and a list of things that doesn't work. Now, if you want to talk to any one of these points, let me know.
Okay.
And then if you just want to give your thoughts on this afterwards. So I think this passes the what happens next test. So I want to figure out how this sort of
Mm.
thing happens. So that's the number one. It's like 1001 Nights. What happens next? It's that childish question. Like, I do want to find out what happens next. The world building was rich, but it's occasionally inscrutable. And I think that's with one hand, I've sort of condemned it with faint praise. I'm like, I live in the internet world, so I could get a quick guide onto, oh, actually, who the fuck is talking? What are those blue people? Oh, they're androids. Okay, does that make sense? So the world
Mm.
building was really cool, but some of it not by intention. It's okay if someone intends it to be obtuse, but when it's obtuse through non-intention, that's a failing. So I think one hand giveth, the other hand tooketh away a little bit. This is a first issue, might I add. This is a number one issue. This is meant to hook you into it. I do want to find out what's next, but some of it was a bit clunky. Now, 5 years is a long time, so I can forgive Sunboy his like shilling for the enemy. I can forgive the depression in Cosmic Boy because he has lost his child. 5 years is a long time. Obviously, it's only 3 months in real life since the last one stopped. Patrick, would you kind of agree that we can have personality shifts, or would that have been like a drop, throw the comic on the ground and stamp on it? Like, because you grew up with these characters. I'm seeing them as an adult. Like,
Yeah, I think anytime you take a Legionnaire and you kind of make them evil, that's gonna be a little bit of a sticky situation. I mean, the Legionnaire, there's so many decades of history with these characters, with their interactions, with them always being paragons of goodness. So that's a little bit difficult, but at the same time, it's almost like you kind of need some sort of they want to introduce that friction, right? That conflict.
yeah,
I also have read before, and I think this bears out other times that he's written for the Legion, that Keith Giffen notoriously hates particular Legionnaires. Some Boy's one of them. Karate Kid is another one. In the latest Legion that Giffen worked on, where he was drawing very Kirby-esque characters, I'm pretty sure Sunboy, spoiler alert, gets cannibalized by an alien race. And they're pretty obvious about it and kind of, I mean, it's a comic, so it's not graphic, but and people didn't like that. I mean, it's a sort of ignominious end for a very beloved, maybe not universally beloved, but a lot of people do like this character. So I think that that's flirting with the line a little bit, but I get it, and Keith is definitely somebody who likes to press buttons. So I think that's what he's doing here. I also do feel like one thing I will call into question, I actually do think that some of the world building is intentionally obtuse to try to draw out the mystery a little bit or to be clever. And I'm okay with that sometimes, but it happens so much in these issues. And like you said, this is a first issue. For something about that, just um, I don't find it inaccessible necessarily. It just gets on my nerves a little bit.
yeah. I don't want
It's
to have a
hard to
P.
explain it.
I don't want to
It
have a
just
PhD in Legion minutia in order to get an in joke that doesn't actually impact the plot. Like,
And I kind of do have that, and I still just that makes me not want to use that knowledge. That makes me want to enjoy a story.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I hate to be like that because, like I said at the beginning, I feel like it's like a person who demands to have everything spelled out for them, and that's not necessarily the case. But there's just something about the way it's done that I find it just a bit grating, and that's just me. So.
one of the other things that I have here in my list, because I actually want to talk. This is one of the reasons of the channel is I get to have a conversation with Patrick. Patrick and I have never discussed this
Mm-mm.
particular era of Legion before, and we've kept it we've kept both of each other blind on our opinions so that we can have this conversation. So one of the things I wanted to mention to you was it gets Legion of Superheroes out of being a Boy Scout clubhouse and these
Hmm.
people being essentially enslaved by the United Planets, albeit with these Vanderpump Rules vibes in their clubhouse. Like it seems a little bit like that. It gets them out of that and into their own thing. And so to the way I look at it is it gets them the Legionnaires from being out of adolescence and into being adults. I think it succeeds in that. Like uh, that to me is an interesting take on the Legion. It's almost like they have those old issues where it's adult Legionnaires. Well, this is it for real. And we'll
Hmm.
find out later, no spoilers, that it's a much more nasty kind of thing than what even the Legionnaires are living with now, is how they've been treated by at least some of the people around them. I'm not sure if that remains canon, but nonetheless, it's an adult story without being like all adult content, if you know what I mean.
I think that's 100% true. I think that's something that probably they felt the Legion was pigeonholed in that way. Now, on the other side of that, there's a lot of people like me who like things the way they were. I
I
was
don't
okay with them
I
being
don't
Boy
dislike the
Scouts.
clubhouse, but I
Yeah.
think
Well,
once
and the hanging around the clubhouse and the peccadillos and whatnot. The other thing is I lost my train of thought for just a second. Is that we are taking them into a more adult theme, but where I feel like in a way where they're doing it so drastically that we're losing some of the past history that we've built. Like they will play on that, but because 5 years, like you said, is such a long time, a lot of that sort of gets washed away in a bit.
I think too, we don't have enough Legionnaires to really make a strong Legion. Like we only really are exposed to maybe five people, indirectly
That's
Sunboy, and then the four others. Does that make a bit of sense,
No,
Patrick?
that
Like,
makes perfect sense.
and I would much rather do a deep dive into three or four in the first sort of four issues, different people each
Then
issue,
have
than
them
have
all
like
dumped at
one
once. Yeah.
page on, yeah, that. So I think they had to choose the least worst option. I think that works for me. Like I said, I want to what happens next, but I do think that they need to make to underscore the Legion a bit more. And you and I both know we've read the sort of first. Well, you've read the whole lot, but I've read the first, 40 or so issues of this, and like we do get there in the end, but it does take a bit longer than what I would
It
have
takes
thought.
a while.
Um,
The other thing, I think that that's maybe something that the Bendis Legion recently suffered from was just having so many characters dumped in. There were so many that we didn't know anything about. They maybe looked, the design was cool. The dialogue for them was sort of very overlapping so that they weren't really distinct personalities. And then they kind of just got lost in the wash. The
I,
other thing that I wanted to mention, I
I
kind
agree.
of now go back to it, is that you said it gets the kids to adulthood and out from under the thumb of the UP, which that's great. But then I know I've told you this before. One of the things I really liked about the Avengers and sort of made me end up liking Avengers at a certain point in my life more than X-Men was I kind of liked the fact that they were sort of connected with the government. I was very establishment kind of a kid. So the Alex P. Keaton of Appalachia. So I was
What is
kind of
it?
okay.
The 8 years for misdemeanor crimes or whatever in one of those
Yes,
Batman
exactly. The
movies.
jewel
There we
thieves are
go.
going to get 20 years. I mean, I was okay with that. No, no, that's a bit extreme. But yeah, I mean, I definitely like the aspect of the Legion being sort of an interplanetary, almost police force. Like I was okay. I like the Green Lantern Corps for that reason. I'm not necessarily somebody who is always supportive of everything that say law enforcement officers do, but in this sort of comic book genre, I kind of like that. So it's okay, but I do feel like they're bringing them into more of the vigilante kind of X-Men style, right? Where they're running from the cops, or the government is against them, and that makes things more interesting probably for the writers.
Yeah, I think they went from basically being a tool of the administration to being almost anti-administration in
Yes.
most ways. But if you consider who the populace voted for and the amount of times Universo has overtaken the United Planets, I'm kind of like it doesn't surprise me.
Exactly. You can't be too surprised.
Another like I've got three more pro comments here. It's intricate, puzzling, and demanding, perhaps to a fault. So, you got to put a little bit of effort in. It rewards a reread, although, Watchmen is in a convenient package, right? Like you can get the whole thing all in a thing. This is something that was coming out month to month to month, and it's indefinite, the ending. So, one thing I'm going to say, Patrick, and I just want to see if you'll agree with it or not. 5 years later is prestige television, but for
Mm.
comics.
Yeah, I could see. Oh, you know what? That's one of the things about prestige television. I feel like if I haven't said it on the show, I'd be surprised if I haven't said it to you. It also has a tendency at times to annoy me for that exact same reason. Oh, Severance. Did we speak
Okay.
about Severance?
Yeah.
I saw the new season of Severance. I liked it. It was good. It had been so long since the first season. I had severanced myself on what happened in the first season, so I had to rewatch the first season to even know what the hell was going on. Um, but it was definitely the second season was definitely one where they wanted to tease out the plot and what was happening. And again, I'm not somebody who has to be handheld, but it did so in a way that I can't 100% explain it. Just got on my nerves, annoyed me. I found it annoying. When I get to the end, I'm getting towards the end of the season, and I have an entire episode that's about a character that's not even really been a huge part of the plot. And it's sort of inscrutable why. I find that annoying. I understand that there's probably going to be a payoff at some point. That's fine. I will stick with it. It's not like I'm going to throw my toys out of the pram, as you Aussies might say, and have a fit. But there's just something about that saps the goodwill from me a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, now that's only certain prestige TV. Now then, I actually just finished whatever season we're on, season three, I guess, of White Lotus. White Lotus has a lot of mysteries, and you're definitely 100% what you're saying. What's going to happen? I want to know what's going to happen. What's going to happen with this character? What's going to happen with this character?
Yeah.
I don't know everything. I'm not having my hand held, but the mystery and the plot seems to move forward in such a way that every episode seems like there are stakes, things are happening, we're moving forward, and I'm getting something out of it
Oh,
instead of just having a carrot dangled over me. Look how clever I am as a writer that I can keep you on the hook as a
so you
reader
want
or a
give and take.
watcher
You want
without
give and
giving you
take.
anything.
Yeah.
Yes. And you have to give me enough to where I feel satisfied for what I'm giving you, even if it's just my time. Let's face it, we all have a lot of demands on our time. So, when you sit down to watch an episode and you get through it and you feel like the plot hasn't moved forward and you're just a little bit more confused, sometimes that feels to me as if someone's trying to get one over on me. And you know me personally, on a personal level, that's not something I respond well to. So I kind of feel like they're trying to show me how smart they are and almost help think that they're better than me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
I
very antagonistic from my point of view. I don't know why I'm like that, but that's the way I
yeah,
am.
I can see that being in the Bierbaums court because they aren't just fans, they're uber fans.
Hmm.
And Keith Giffen has been a comics professional at this point for over 15 years. The Bierbaums are basically fanfic that made it big. And good luck to them, like good luck to them. But sometimes they've just disappeared so far up their own asshole that they're like trying to score points on people.
I think so too.
Um,
I really do. Look how smart we are. Look how much we know. And some of their plot devices and some of their callbacks were great and brilliant. I don't disagree with that, and I think that's great. I really do enjoy that. I like the fact the Legion was always like that, even back in the Silver Age days, where they would take
it's
costume ideas or
It's the
fan
it's the
ideas.
book all the fans want to work on, and indeed, this is Free Comic Book Day today. I did a special issue on the new Young Blood. Rob Liefeld loves Legion of Superheroes. Youngblood is essentially 30 new characters all in one issue, one book. He's made a whole, it's essentially a riff on Legion. Now, that is the sort of thing where there's so much going on, you don't get any story for the individual people. And because it is definitely not 9 panel grids, it's a lot of like open space stuff, as you can imagine from Rob Liefeld. You don't get that depth of story. And so here, I think we have enough depth of story that there's so many panels, we're getting given enough information that I think if we go back to our prestige TV thing, Patrick, I think we get enough give at least for now. We might not like it. Like it's okay to be like, oh, I hate what happened there, but I wonder what's going to come out of that scenario with
Yes.
the war and so on in the Bay of Biscayne or whatever it's called, Venando Bay.
Venado.
Yeah. Um,
That's well, and that's the other thing. You have to have a little patience with this, right? You have to wait. You have to invest so that you have the payoff eventually. And this is with anything in life. You know, we're a society of instant gratification. I don't like to think of myself as that kind of person in times. Of course, we all are. But you really have to have a little patience and grace with first issues, with TV series and whatnot. Now, but like I said, if we get 10 issues in and then we have one issue where it's just black panels with words and I can't tell who's talking, yeah, that's gonna piss me off.
so,
I'm not
so
gonna
that
like that.
annoyed me. I would have had my villain reveal. So that's just to cut a long story short, and there's going to be one more point before I get into the negatives with Patrick. That well, this is a negative. The very last panel, we get a reveal of the villain, but there's no reveal. It's just someone talking in 9 black panels. Now that villain turns out to be super powerful, super cool, and very compelling. You got to you've got to make the cliffhanger. Like
Yeah.
one thing that none of those Image comic people are doing is leaving a cliffhanger untouched. They're going to put it in every single minute that they can because they know that that brings the energy, that brings the readers. That is the one thing that I would have changed in that last page of like the text box. Patrick, you would have put in that villain in, right?
Oh yeah, and that's a perfect example of dangling it over the reader's head, right? But then if you're smart enough or if you can decipher it, then you'll get the Cracker Jack prize. And that all feels patronizing to me. And I feel like that's the way it comes off a little bit. I'm not saying it was meant that way. I'm just saying that as an individual with my biases and my baggage, and we know that there's a lot, that's my reaction to that sort of thing is, oh well, if you knew as much as we did, then you'd be
Yeah,
able to figure it out. But if you can't, you gotta wait until next month. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know. Just show me who the hell it is. I'm
yeah.
good.
So,
It's
Patrick,
also very confusing with this one because as we find out,
I didn't know what the hell was going on in that last page. Like,
exactly.
firstly, it's one thing to be obscure, it's another thing to be impenetrable, and that landed on impenetrable rather than obscure.
And it's
So
also a cheating, like you said, because we find out later that it's all the same voice, right?
yeah,
So,
which
yeah.
that made that actually sort of if I was given the cliffhanger panel, I would have understood, oh wow, this guy's nuts. Because I'm
Yeah.
not given the cliffhanger panel, I'm just annoyed.
Hmm.
This guy's nuts. How am I meant to know that? Like, I know unreliable narrator is a fantastic literary device, um, but maybe it doesn't really work well in periodical form because I can't keep reading the book.
Yes.
Just between you and me. So the last thing I wanted to cover in what I think is a positive is, although Giffen isn't a 9 panel stylist like Dave Gibbons, who breaks the beauty of the 9 panel. The beauty of knowing musical rules is you know when to break them. The beauty of knowing how to do art is you know when to do it wrong. The beauty of the 9 panel grid is when you shake it up, and Giffen, to his credit, shakes it up a bit more often than what he's given credit for, although he
Hmm.
keeps the bars. To me, if you got rid of the bars, that would make those sort of panels really pop more. But the second thing is the positive part of the story. There's so much ground to cover. It gives him the real estate to cover the ground. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. approach, Patrick.
Yeah, I think I love the nine panels. I agree that I think it would behoove them to throw in a few mixtures, and I think he does later on more. Um, I'm actually okay with the pseudo nine panels. Sometimes I've kind of figured out. I mean, not, I know you know, but I've kind of figured out how to read those in my head so that I get something from the fact that they're in different panels as opposed to one big panel. Do you know what I mean? It's
It
almost
does
like the
get you.
passage
You
of
can have the
time.
vista, and then you have the people walking in the distance, so you can have the vista. But I
Yeah.
understand. This is like breaking the rules. You kind of want to have it all. We can't have it all. But I'm
But
pleased
you're
that you
right.
notice.
Without
I'm pleased that you noticed that because I see so many complaints on the interwebs when I'm looking up these issues. Like,
Yeah, I actually have gotten to where I enjoy that, and I kind of like to figure out, oh, why did they add a panel here when it doesn't really need to be necessarily? And, oh, I see it, and that, or like, oh, what are they trying to convey? It's like one thing I do when I write is I love creative use of punctuation, right? I think punctuation really can inform your writing, and whether it's comic books or prose, whatever. But that's just another thing. Like, what are you trying to convey with that comma? What are you trying to convey with that semicolon? It's the same thing when we have a gutter out of nowhere. It's like, oh, why was that gutter there? So sometimes that can be interesting. And I agree with you. Without the nine panels, I can't even imagine. Nothing like the first issue would have been like nothing. We would have we
even
would
if
have
we're
known
making
nothing.
even if we're making giant-sized issues that have like those massive, awesome new Batman giant-sized issues, like even if we're making the comic so massive, you couldn't do a conventional comic layout pattern and even have maybe a third. This is like triple giant size issue if we're doing conventional like larger splash pages and all
Or
that
you'd
stuff.
have to just tell the story in a completely different way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So yeah, so what didn't work for me is that there's no narrative drive. So the narrative drive, as far as I can gather, is Chameleon Boy trying to get the Legion together, and it's interspersed. That skeleton is interspersed with a whole bunch of stuff that has happened. So as much as I just said, I love world building, and if you can info dump while doing world building, all the more power to you, sir. I did find that that was a little bit lightweight for me. Like, or I know I want to figure out what happens, but like, what is actually happening was not necessarily conveyed as well. Were you a little were you a little bit befuddled, Patrick,
It's
by
almost like the spine of getting the Legion back together isn't the spine enough,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
it's almost overwhelmed by the minutia of all the other side plots, B plots, whatever plots. So no, I can sense that. I actually did not get the sense in rereading it after years, I was like, oh, Chameleon, and and then I had to take notes on it. So I was like, Chameleon Boy's getting the Legion back together. But if you had asked me what this issue was about beforehand, that wouldn't necessarily have stuck out. Like, I mean, he says he is, and he goes to talk to Cosmic Boy, but that's really all he does. So he's not on the horn calling up
yeah.
so and so. He's not talking to somebody else and saying, and I understand that these are sort of more elementary plot devices and methods of writing, but he's not talking. When he was talking to the android, he wasn't like, and after I find Cosmic Boy, I'm going to do this, or we don't really know how he's going to go about doing this or much of anything. So, like I said, that's one of the problems with this comic is a lot happens and a lot is conveyed, but not much happens either. So,
It's very diffuse. There's no propulsion to it. It's just diffuse. So it was interesting enough to make me want to figure out what happens next. But I do think it starts to get propulsive, and I do think, especially in one of the things that is going to happen around issue 5, 6, or 7, like that's a thing that you want resolved, right? That the whole reality warping stuff is a thing that you want resolved. So that gives you the punch, that gives you the drive, that gives you the propulsion to the next thing. This is just very diffuse for me. And we've also talked about the villain reveal. So that was a little bit negative. And for an issue one, not having the villain reveal is very, very strange, especially for someone with like Keith Giffen has done a lot of stuff even this is like maybe the halfway point in his career. He's done a lot of stuff, Patrick, and I'm just almost shocked that there was no actual reveal in issue one.
I think there's two reasons. I think one of the things about the villain, and I think this also harkens back to why some of the stuff seems inscrutable or intentionally obtuse, is that that's a callback by the Bierbaums to the earlier years of the Legion when they would have like this in the Silver Age, they would have these sort of these are the mystery legionnaires. Who are they? And then it was mystery to the reader, and then there may be a clue here or there, and then at the end it would be, oh, it was Supergirl all along, or whatever. So I feel like a little bit of that is being harkened back to where except they're not really giving a ton of clues. I mean, I know who the villain is because I've read the story, but I also know who the villain is from reading older stories. That's not really a villain that was super fleshed out anyway, so it'd be very difficult to even give a lot of clues. And so I don't really feel like they're giving you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah, yeah.
almost
So some things that are in the
it's a
Silver
little
Age are
dishonest.
best to stay in the Silver Age. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I don't mystery comic books were never I always thought they were kind of hokey. Like this whole story is about and you're gonna solve the mystery while you read it. I don't really, but I don't necessarily read mysteries
So yeah, I'm a big
in book
fan of
form.
detective fiction, but
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan. Like detective fiction without playing fair is just called a thriller.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Well, and like when I watch a movie, I prefer to just watch the movie. And it
yeah,
kind of annoys me when people I'm watching it with are trying to like, oh, that's gonna happen. I'm like, just can we just watch the movie? Like, why are you trying to jump ahead? Like, I don't know. Just let it
so
happen. Let it be a surprise. You don't have to figure it out before it happens.
so we'll cover, dear viewers, the rest of this in some later episodes. But where do you land on this, Patrick?
Yeah, so where to put it? It's ambitious. Um, what did we have after Invasion 1?
So that's Fantastic Four 218. So invasion is one of the did you bite off more than you could chew demarcation zones of tarnished bronze. Do you think it's better or worse than invasion? To help, I like it better than invasion because I think we just bagged it for being inscrutable, but I think it's more coherent than invasion.
Okay, then is it better than heavy metal?
Uh,
It's tough because heavy metal is a full story. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? It's not a one-off
I,
comic book like this.
I'm happy to actually drop it. It doesn't work as much of a comic book as Life Death. Like I think it's not as good as that in the sense of like that had a big scope and it tried to pull bigly things and maybe some of them didn't work. And some of the characters, especially you've read a lot more of these characters than me, they were misfires, but they were in timeline misfires. These character differences that we're disliking right now, I'm going to give it grace. This isn't a misfire. This is an evolution of character.
Choice.
So
Yes.
I can't
I'll
tarnish it.
also answer my own question and say that I think heavy metal works better as a story overall because it's not a one-off. So I actually would put this below heavy metal.
Okay, so we're waiting then for issue two and three. I think we'll have issue four as another separate one, and then the next ones we might batch into the more coherent storylines. But I just wanted to give the viewers as well as ourselves like a little bit of a peek into what it would be like just doing these individually because that's how they came out, Patrick. So if you think this works, we'll do two and three in separate. We'll do four separate because that's, as everyone knows, the Monel special. And then the rest we'll do by arc up until we end that first basically year of 5 years later. Because these are basically de novo discussions that we've had today. I don't think we've covered grid. I don't think we've covered like what we actually want to be in the dark about in comics before. So I found this was pretty
Mm.
enlightening. So I'm happy to put this in at just below heavy metal, just above Invasion 1. And then we can see if it sinks or swims. I've got a feeling that I did sort of like the second and third issues because stuff happened that was apparent. So we'll see how that goes. Patrick, any last word for anybody today?
I have nothing left to give, but I don't know. I don't. I was trying to think of some good last words, but no. Give
So
me liberty or give me death.
okay, well that's a hell of a thing on Free Comic Book Day to get out with. So Patrick, if you like this, you can like, follow, and subscribe. This isn't the last 5 years later Legion that we would do, nor is it the last Legion that we will cover. I feel that Tarnished Bronze Imprimatur definitely covers a lot of this Legion stuff. So we will see you on the next one.